What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this special episode of the Sports Scramble podcast presented by Old City Sports Network. I'm your host, Chet. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Wade and Tyler. Jacob wasn't able to join us tonight. He had to close down the Home Depot working the late shift. But we've got a special guest on tonight, Mr. Ross Dellenger from Sports Illustrated. How you doing tonight, Ross?
Good to be on with you guys.
Yeah, glad to have you on. We linked up with Ross on Twitter, sent him a DM, and asked him to come on the show. We're glad to have him on. We actually have I guess our families are intertwined a little bit from back home. My grandpa is fishing buddies with your grandpa, and I think my grandma plays cards with your grandma like once a month or something. So I was like, well, let's see. And plus, your dad taught all three of us religion in high school, so
Oh,
it
that's too
worked
bad.
out
That's
that way.
unfortunate. So you know nothing about religion, then,
Well, I
right?
know a lot
They're
about
very,
special
very
teams high
Catholic.
school
A lot of
football. So
a lot about
yeah,
special teams. Yes.
yeah, that's
No,
what
small world.
he. I will say, is he as fast of a car driver as he is a bus driver? Because we never were late to a football game because I mean we were booking it through those back roads in Mississippi.
Actually, him behind the car is pretty slow. Actually, so it's funny. I knew that he drives a bus pretty fast because he knows I know he wants to get home.
Yeah,
And those last few years, he was really ready to retire. So he was ready to get home as quick as possible. But no, he's getting to be an old man, man. He putters along in the car.
yeah. Well, that's probably a good thing because I mean we were. I think I was just looking out the window and motion flashing by, but we were never late, so that was always good. But yeah, for those who don't know, Ross, he's a writer for Sports Illustrated. You were in Baton Rouge for what 5 years with the Advocate before you signed on with SI.
Uh, yeah, right about 5.5 years. 2013, I came in toward the end of the 2013 football season, and I left just before the 2018 season began. I stayed in Baton Rouge another year. I was working for SI at the time, but I was in Baton Rouge, and then I left, and right before the 2019 season, I moved to
Oh,
DC. So right
so
before the championship. So I was taking a lot. I basically a 2019 season, about I don't know, probably a third of the way through, I ended up becoming basically a beat writer again, and so I
right.
flew back and forth to Baton Rouge quite a bit.
Yeah, no, that's what. Too bad you couldn't hold that move off for another year, but you probably
Yeah,
racked up those airline miles, huh? So you get
I did.
gold, platinum status or whatever with some of the airline companies. So, but I guess tell us about that 2019 season, like covering that team. Just I guess the atmosphere around them. I mean, as a lot of them say, best college football team to ever play the sport. What was it like just being around those guys?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I got really lucky because I had such good relationships from being on the beat and being down there for so long. I think they probably gave me more, kind of inside type of access than they would anybody else, and then they would if I was an actual local beat writer. I think I got a lot more access as a national guy that they knew and trusted. So it was really cool to get, a lot of inside one-on-one type stuff. I sit down just one-on-one with Joe Burrow probably three times or so. And, that was really cool and was, you know, somewhat unusual for me to get that kind of access. And then, you know, as the season went along, it became pretty evident, where it was going to end, and especially after the Alabama game, I think everybody realized that there was probably no team that was going to beat them, and
Right.
so then
Yeah.
you start, getting together. What are the big stories you're going to write on this team at this remarkable run? And was able to go down and do a cool story. Went down to the Bayou where Ed Orgeron's from, and sat with his mom, and was able to do some cool things. I sat with Sam Nader, was a long time support staff member who was kind of in charge of LSU's walk-on program for like 40 years. He's basically the longest, um, I guess you could say the longest tenured support staff member in FBS. I think we ended up figuring out it was like 45 or 50 years. So it was pretty cool to like tell his story that had never really been told. And then I remember sitting down with the 3 receivers all together in the same room. And that was really fun. Those guys just, they I think Terrace Marshall and Jamar Chase and George,
Justin.
Jefferson.
Yeah, Justin.
Yeah.
Jordan.
Not Jordan. Yeah,
I don't think he
Jordan.
would have got the
Yeah.
probably
So-
the popularity contest. Justin
Yeah.
won that one.
Not locally.
No,
Yeah,
but
no.
it was a blast. It was really fun, and it was memorable. The whole thing was really.
Yeah, no, that's just. I mean, that was our. I mean, we graduated the year after, but COVID season kind of a wash with the football stadiums and everything. Being there in 2019 is just the energy unmatched inside Death Valley. So, and you were at the Alabama game, weren't you? I think I remember seeing some pictures on Twitter. I mean, that must have just been unreal, especially with Alabama coming back in the second half. And it just, I mean, I'd have loved to see an all-out like 52-0 blowout, but Alabama's got to play us tight. So,
yeah, I that game was interesting. I decided to do something a little different, and I set for most of the game. I spent that morning all the way through the third quarter of that game with the Alabama athletic director to do a story that had nothing to do really with the game. But it was interesting to be sitting in his booth and be walking around during the game with him while this was going on. It was very much a different angle. And then after the game, to be down the field, you would have thought LSU won the championship there. It was just wild. It was, probably the craziest scene of a regular season game that I've ever seen. You never seen kind of players react like that and coaches react like that. And it's just probably a testament to the bottled frustration of roughly, I think it was 8 or 9 years of losing to Alabama,
It was always that hump we could never get over. And with you being in Baton Rouge for so long, but you went to Mississippi State, that's right?
I did. Yep.
Yeah. So where are your loyalties lie when LSU's playing Mississippi State? Who are you cheering for?
Well, I try to be unbiased in general. Just like when I was covering LSU, like sure when the team did well, it usually was good for me, mostly because everybody was in a good mood and
Right.
people usually want to read about good teams. But I never really rooted for them or certainly tried like not to. And my Mississippi State fandom probably died when I was in college there. Just realized I needed to try to be as unbiased and impartial. I knew what I was going to do for a living, so I kind of tried to step away. I would say the last time I was probably a real hardcore State fan was my sophomore year. But it was pretty easy to step away from being a fan, specifically of Mississippi State football, since I was there during the worst 4 years of Mississippi State football history, which is really saying a lot. They won 11 games in 4 years.
Wow.
So it was a rough go. So that one was pretty easy.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I've got some family, went to Mississippi State, grew up LSU fans. It's a little easier to root for LSU, but hey, in the past few years, Mississippi State's been on the come up with the new coach and this air raid offense. So, but I guess we've got a list of questions for you. We've already started asking questions, but I guess one that we like to ask all of our guests when they come on is, if you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Wow.
Put him on the spot.
Yeah, put you on the spot.
Just
Put him
there.
inside
in
the
sports
5-yard
or
line.
anybody?
Just
or-
anybody.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that the answer could probably go different directions here because I probably would want to have dinner with a family member who's deceased, or
Right,
somebody, somebody that I was close to or something. But if we're talking about just kind of like legendary type figures or something like that, it would probably be, it probably would be somebody in sports that probably wasn't alive when I was alive, but that I've read about. I mean, I think of like people like Bear Bryant or something.
Yeah.
Would be a pretty cool chat. So yeah, I mean, like somebody like that, I think.
Yeah, that'd be a heck of an article you could put out on Sports Illustrated too.
Uh-huh.
Sit down dinner with Bear Bryant. So
Yep.
I got a question for you. How has the transition, going from local college coverage to the national stage covering college football?
Well, it's I was really scared at first. I didn't, obviously I've been a beat writer at different places, but at all those places I only had one team. Missouri, I covered them for a few years. Auburn, Jackson State, and then of course LSU. I always just had that one team, so it really actually scared me when you open it up to 130 FBS, more specifically about 65 Power 5 teams, and that was a concern, but it has been easier than I thought. I developed enough relationships at LSU where the LSU coaches, administrators, and I developed relationships within the SEC too, where I had good support there around the league, and also again developing a relationship with people at LSU who then went off to other places. You kind of keep those relationships even though they're somewhere else. I mean, most of Baylor staff is former LSU football coaches or players, and so I got a good relationship with them. That's a kind of a good example. And so your web kind of sources grows, and that's kind of what's happened. Luckily for me, I did have already good relationships with people in the SEC, and it's kind of become obviously, especially over the last few years, the most dominant college football conference. So, your web grows like that, and and you do things. You obviously write in a way, right? You get to write different stories. You have a little more time to write different stories. I thought when I joined SI, I was going to be doing more long form features. The last couple of years, just because of the sheer volume of news, I've become more of a reporter and breaking stories and news stories. And while that's fun and all, it can be a grind and it can be exhausting. But it's kind of like being back on the beat. You're just covering national storylines from a national perspective. So it's not been as bad as I thought. It's worked out pretty well. And I've been, in a way, I kind of took advantage of a couple things. COVID for one. There's a lot of sports writers that didn't want to touch COVID and how it impacted college football, and I kind of dove right in and was able to establish relationships with some of the most important people in college sports because they were making a lot of COVID decisions. And then NIL came, and I was up in DC where a lot of that action's happening. So kind of got lucky too, and everything's kind of fallen in place a little bit.
So when there's like a breaking news, is there like a Ross sign in the sky, like bat sign just pops up and like who to call, or you've got sources like, hey, this is about to break, so you can get on it too? Or like,
Yeah,
I guess how's that work?
it depends. Usually the way it works is you get a tip from somebody you're just casually talking to, whether it's a coach, or administrator, athletic director, or commissioner, and you just kind of get a tip and you take that tip. It's like I tell like young journalists, like it's just like a little crumb, when you're trying to find the sandwich somewhere, and so you make call after call after call, and then you kind of get more crumbs until ta-da, there's a sandwich. So it takes a lot of work and patience, and it can be it can be stressful, but usually it just starts with a little tip. That's I would guess 80% of news stories often start with that. It's just a morsel of information that you have to grow by making more calls, basically, and vetting the story.
Yeah, finding those reliable sources that you can follow up with.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Ross. I'm Wade. Nice to meet you. I live here in Baton Rouge, so very intently following all news purple and gold. like these guys do too, but I'm the local source these days, and just kind of keep them in the loop. But going back to that 2019 season, you said you got to sit down with a lot of the position groups and the coaching staff. Coach O, of course, a very memorable personality for us all, regardless of what happened after the national championship. But do you have any favorite quotes or memories just from your coverage during that season?
I mentioned going down to the Bayou, and I was originally born in Morgan City, and my dad he started his career there at Central Catholic, and my mom's side of the family is actually originally from New Iberia, and they're Cajun, and so I'm part Cajun, so I knew about down there, and I had been to parts of there before, but I'd really never gone that deep down in the bayou and met the people down there, and it was just fascinating. It's like a whole different country, and that was really cool. And then I sit down with his mom for Miss Coco for about 4 hours or so, I guess, and it was just an incredible conversation. And included a lot of laughs and smiles and tears from her. So it was intense, and doing that whole story, which I'd wanted to write for a long, long time, was really enjoyable.
Right.
It was really fun, and he obviously, he was a fun guy to cover, and my relationship with him dates a long way back when he was out of football that year, even. Got to know him a little bit, and covering him through the years has been eventful, I'd say. And I think what happened at the end, unfortunately, was probably somewhat predictable for a lot of people. I think what happened in the middle wasn't predictable. I don't think that anybody expected him to lead LSU to a national championship, and so that was incredible run to watch, and it was an incredible story. And I do kind of hate how it ended, because clearly something changed after he won the championship, and I feel like some people, when they get to the top of the mountain, they want to stay there or somehow get to a higher peak. And some people are just kind of satisfied, I think. And, that weight of the years of trying to reach that point is lifted, and you kind of change. And, part of me thinks that kind of is what happened.
Yeah. I think at that time in 2019, in 2018 too, he was just a perfect coach for LSU, just embodied the culture, embodied the spirit of what LSU football is. And that's what I think made that college football team so special and made them stand out from so many other teams. I used to see him when I'd go work out to the UREC at the location they had by the stadium. He'd be jogging around campus, and I'd see him. I'd wave at him after I just got done working out, but I wouldn't be out there in that Baton Rouge heat jogging around that big
On the
campus.
levee,
So,
nonetheless.
No.
yeah, he'd get out there on the levee, be running. I saw him in Destin one time, put some miles in.
Mm-hmm.
So he, speaking of down on the bayou and everything, I know you're a big crawfish guy. So you got any like secret recipe, secret ingredient you put in there in your crawfish just to make it stand out up there in DC? Because I know you can't buy it there. You probably got to make it yourself, huh?
Well, we did a boil up here late May. We did a boil up here, and I got them flown in from they come in dry ice in a
Right.
styrofoam cooler from Lafayette. It was Lafayette, and it was Lafayette by way of like Shreveport, then from Shreveport to Memphis, then from Memphis to here to DC, and
Yeah.
so they came, and that's the second time I've done them up here like that. Surprisingly, almost all of them were alive. I've been pretty impressed with the company. I don't do anything really different. It's a pretty normal mixture of stuff. I do obviously as far as seasonings, I do the typical, the salt and I go back and forth on Louisiana crab boil or Zatarain's crab boil. I go back and forth with them. Sometimes I even mix them together. I do a lot of lemon always.
Yeah.
That's kind of a
Yeah.
key. And there's something that I do that maybe everybody doesn't do, and that's oranges. So I do a lot of oranges or like the little, they call them like the cuties, the little small ones. And I cut them
Right.
in
Yeah.
half and squeeze
Throw
them in.
those in there.
And add like an extra kind of you want like that, because I want my crawfish obviously to be juicy. I want them to be a little bit spicy. I want them to be salty in that savory, acidic. So you getting all that together can be difficult. But that's probably the different thing that I do. I'd say seasoning wise is the oranges. In some parts of my family, instead of squeezing oranges in, they actually put orange juice in there, which I've never done. But they'll put like a couple of gallons of orange juice in there.
I've never seen oranges in it. Like, my dad's side of the family is from Slidell. Grew up on the bayou, and I'm from Biloxi, but they bring all those traditions there for sure. My mom recently has started putting, after it's all cooked, she'll throw watermelon in there and just kind of let it soak up, and you eat that watermelon after, get all the flavor. My dad
We have
loves
done
them.
that. Yep.
Yeah, my dad loves them like eyes tearing up, spicy that way. That's how I like them. But for my
I hate 'em
grandmas,
like
so we
that.
gotta get them mild. You don't like them
Yeah.
spicy like that, or you
No,
like them real
I want
mild?
I want all the flavors in my mouth, not just like fire hot. I want it
No,
all.
I
So,
agree with that.
but watermelon is really good. Brussels sprouts are really good. Actually, as crazy as that kind of sounds.
That's the only
And
way
then
I'll eat
recently,
Brussels sprouts.
and then recently we did something that I think is the best I've ever had, and it is pineapple, but it's pineapple that's
Huh.
in a can, and it's already the pre-sliced pineapple, not the chunks, but the sliced. And you poke holes in the can, you throw the can in at the very end, and so the can sits in there for maybe 15, 20 minutes while they're soaking, and it's fantastic because you have the pineapple is sweet, and you got the spicy and the salty. It's really really good. I'd recommend doing that.
I'll have to try that out next time. I know in the spring in DC when they start smelling the crawfish cooking, they know where to go to find
Not
it.
too hard to narrow it down there.
No. We live in DuPont Circle, which is right in the middle of the city, and we have a patio that's like street facing, and thousands of people walk by every day. And so we did it. Yeah, we pretty much did it right on our patio, and there was a lot of weird looks. I definitely a lot of weird looks, and I have a big crawfish table that my grandpa and my dad actually built because my grandpa was a sheet metal roofer, and it's all sheet metal, and I think a lot of people passed by, saw us, and thought it was a crab bowl or it was little baby lobsters, which we get quite a bit. Like no. So got to teach a lot of people up here what crawfish are.
Ross,
Right,
I was
right.
in DC earlier this summer for a Atlanta Braves and Washington Nationals game, and we were kind of pre-gaming before the game, and I saw this van looked very out of place, and it was called Chasing Tails. And I just pulled up the photo here. It's backyard boiling and catering. I'm assuming they do crab as well, but it has a giant crawfish on it, and it says they're based out of Arlington, Virginia. So you
There
might
you
have a
go.
local source.
There you
Chasing
go. I've
Tails.
heard of Chasing Tails. I've never, and I don't know that I've heard of that. I don't know if that, that's like a somewhat common name for companies. There's like
Right.
one on the coast. So I don't know if I'm thinking about the one on the coast or not, but that's interesting. I'll have to keep that in mind. Yeah, a lot of people do. Yeah, a lot of people do crab bowls up here. The way they cook, I don't know if y'all know, the way they do, they're real high on their crab here,
Right.
off of Maryland crab and everything. But the way they cook it is very different. They steam it, and then they throw all the seasoning like right on top. And because it's steamed, it sticks on there, and then it gets on your hands and stuff. And it's better than I thought it would be. I really like crab like that. I don't know that I'd like any other seafood like that. Certainly not like you couldn't do crawfish like that or anything like that. I don't think, but and I don't think I would even like shrimp like that. But crab. Their crab is really good the way they do it, and it peels well. And I actually kind of like the seasoning on the top when it steams, so it's really good.
Yeah, I was shocked when I moved here to Houston, went to go get some crawfish for the first time, and they do crawfish like that. They do it both ways, but they'll boil it and they'll put a little bit of season in the boil. But then when they take it out and they give it to you, they just dump the seasoning on top. Which
Yeah,
I mean, it's good. You can kind of lick it off your fingers, but I like it how we do it back home. So
yeah,
it's
and
got a lot more flavor to it.
yeah, and when they do that, it kind of makes you feel like, well, I guess you didn't do a good enough job cooking them. You had to give
Right?
them,
You didn't put
douse
enough in
them
there.
in yeah, sauce. But I've seen that done before. And then I see, and this is a big thing on the bayou. I learned is then I see the dipping sauce that people use with crawfish, and I had never experienced that. And again, that's another thing. I'm like, if you have to dip your crawfish, your chef really is doing a poor job. But then they gave me I tweeted about that like a few years ago, and all these Cajuns came out of the woodwork and we're like, this is how we do it in the bayou. We to put the sauce on the side and we dip this. Like, no. Like I didn't know about that. That's what they do. Like they dip their crawfish of all places on the bayou. So.
Huh? Didn't know that.
Yeah, they love their dipping sauce down here. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my next question is going to be surrounding conference realignment. Recently, we saw USC and UCLA go to the Big Ten. Which conference do you think could be to be on the move, looking for some more teams?
Well, maybe the Big Ten again. That's a possibility, I think.
The Big 20.
Yeah, it's about to be the Big 20.
Yeah, so I think there's a chance that the Big Ten expands again at some point. Right now we're in a weird situation because I think I think everything depends on two things. I think we already know that, first of all, that Notre Dame is going to remain independent, or at least plans to. So the two determining factors right now, I think, are number one, whatever the Big Ten wants to do. If it wants to invite ACC teams, even though they're locked into a deal, if it wants to invite Pac-12, Big 12, whatever. So it's kind of like up to them, number one, what they want to do. And then number two, there are four Pac-12 teams that I think would leave for the Big 12 if the Pac-12's media rights, new media rights contract is not what they want it to be, is not big enough. In that case, they might leave for the Big 12. And that could set off a domino effect that would have, some of the other Pac-12 teams maybe looking for a home, specifically in the Big Ten. So that's what's kind of going on right now. So I think what we really need to know is what the Pac-12's new media rights deal looks like, and is it going to be good enough for those 10 Pac? I guess it's Pac-10 now. Pac-10
Yeah,
teams.
they're all going to have to change their names.
Yeah, I know.
They didn't last time, so
is it good enough? That's the question. Is the media rights still going to be rich enough? And if it's not, you could have some real domino, more realignment. And again, the number one determining factor, if the Big Ten just wants to add whoever, there's a lot of people out west that would just come. So it kind of falls in their court as well.
I must say it's going to sound really weird hearing that CBS college football intro to watch a Big Ten football game at 2:30 between Michigan and UCLA instead of Alabama and Georgia or something. So that's going to be one change I'm not necessarily looking forward to.
Yeah,
it's like a core memory hearing the intro and then seeing like LSU and Alabama play or something.
Right, it is. It's going to be odd, and I'm assuming they'll keep the name and the colors and the logos will change, but or keep the jingle. And I know that a big thing was, what ESPN's going to come up with as far as, they're going to have I know they're going to have like an exclusive SEC kind of theme song, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you, I saw that you were covering Augusta in April. So that's like an all-time dream. I think Wade has been there once before. He looked into that one. But besides Augusta, and if it is you answered, what's one of the like most memorable sporting events you've ever attended? Being, working it just as a fan. What do you have?
But yeah, Augusta's up there. And I won I did cover it this past year. It was my first time as a journalist covering it. But a few years ago, I think it was 17 or 18, I won the fan lottery, and got 2 tickets for one day. And so I took my dad, and we both went on that Thursday opening round. And that was really cool, just to, go with your dad, and walk around Augusta and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
That was a pretty cool experience. But outside of Augusta, it probably has to be when I was a kid going to college football games, specifically, the Egg Bowl. I've been to a couple of Egg Bowl games when I was younger that were just insane. I mean, just incredibly intense, and things that memories that I'll always have in memories that made me want to cover sports. The 2000 Egg Bowl, I think it's 2000. I was sitting, my dad at St. Stanislaus, he was at St. Stanislaus at the time. And he coached Stephen Peterman, who ended up going on as an offensive lineman and playing at LSU and being, I think, an All-American and being on Saban's 03 championship team. And he was being recruited by LSU. And he was being recruited by Mississippi State. And Mississippi State gave him 50-yard line tickets at lower level. And he took my dad and I with some of the tickets, gave us some of the tickets. And so we were able to sit there at the Egg Bowl, and Mississippi State, stormed back to win at the last minute on a field goal. And everybody rushed the field, and those things are just incredible. And there's some LSU games, again, tied to Stephen, all of it's tied to Stephen Peterman in 2001, the Sugar Bowl. My dad and I went there through tickets through Peterman and stuff. And I got to see, that LSU team beat Illinois in the Sugar Bowl. And then there are some games in Death Valley during Peterman's run during that 03 championship season. I would come down from Mississippi State, actually, and go to some games. I think probably the most defining LSU game I think I ever went to as a kid was the Auburn game in 2001, because September 11th happened and they moved the game to the end of the season. And that game was the quasi SEC Western Championship game. The winner got to go to Atlanta. And, I think it was 2 years before, it was a cigar game when Auburn came in and beat LSU and lit up Tuberville, and crew lit up cigars on the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was an incredibly intense game. We were up in the upper deck, and it was just amazing. It was just the atmosphere. It was just unbelievable. And it's things like that, that really made me want to be, get into college football. And these days, the sad thing is I don't enjoy it as much, because I'm not really a fan, and I don't enjoy it. I can't sit in the crowd and get drunk and yell and scream. It just, I do kind of miss that.
Yeah, no, that's the atmosphere. I've been to a few different stadiums. And it's a little biased on my end going to LSU, but I mean, it's it's almost unmatched. It's very hard to replicate that. I mean, our other host who's working tonight, Jacob, he's a Penn State guy. He's been to a few Penn State whiteout games. Those get pretty rowdy. I mean, that's just one of those types of atmospheres you can't match. We don't want to keep you too long. I got another question for you.
That's fine.
What do you think the future of the playoffs is going to look like for college football? You think they're going to work towards expansion? I know they tried a little bit this year, but just didn't work out.
Yeah, I think they're going to expand. It'll expand. It didn't happen this past year. A lot of it for kind of political reasons, not political like Congress, but personal political type reasons among commissioners not agreeing. There's some bitterness and all that stuff. So although they voted in March not to expand past or before the current contract ends, which it's the last year's in 25. There's still a window for that to happen, and they've intimated that, suggested recently that they still could do it. So I'll believe it when I see it that they'll do it before the end of the contract, because there's a lot of bitter feelings in the room, especially now with realignment. But there is a chance, there is a window there that they still could do it. It certainly has to be done by this fall, by the end of the year, if they're going to expand before the contract, and it would be 2024, 2025. It would start in 2024, so basically 2 years from now, and it would be expanded. And I would assume that they would go with, if they do this, it would be the original 12-team proposal that they spent a year haggling over unnecessarily. So it would be that original proposal. So I think probably eventually it does go to 12, and then maybe down the line it goes to 16, or maybe it just goes to 16 if they don't get it done this fall before the contract ends, and they let it go to market and they let the contract expire. Then it's kind of like the deck is cleared in a way, and maybe they do go to 16. But I think, because that's a big talking point now among some conferences, is 16. But I think that they got a lot. There's 11 CFP members that have to vote on it. I think right now they've got 9, if not 10, on board with the 12. All of a sudden, they've
So
got
just that one last person just holding them up.
Yeah, there's one or two. Yeah, I think, and the thing is one is not gonna, it's probably not gonna go it alone, because other people will leak it, who they were, what conference it was, and that'll get out, and that'll look really bad. So, I'm getting more and more the feeling that they are actually, because of pressure and such, they might actually get it done this fall, and there's a chance there they get it done, and in 24, we have an expansion.
Yeah, well, I like to see it. So we had some bright ideas on one of our past shows of making like 10-game seasons, and then having the Power 5 all play conference champions, take those champions, 18 playoff. We went into it for like 45 minutes trying to figure out how it could work. But I'll let Tyler, you take this last question, and then we won't keep you too much longer, Ross.
Yeah, just one final question. Speaking of the playoff, who do you have what 4 teams do you have it making to the college football playoff at the end of the year?
I think I have the normal 3, which is Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. And then I threw in kind of a curveball. I don't know why, but I have faith in USC this year, with their reloaded team with Lincoln Riley and Caleb and Addison and all that. So, and they're playing in the Pac-12. So,
right,
it should be a somewhat easier road. So I do. Those are my 4, and I think I end up. I think I have Ohio State and Alabama playing the championship game, I believe, and Alabama winning. I know, shocking. I know. But that's it. That's the era we're in college sports. It's the Nick Saban era.
Yeah, I think Ohio State fans will just be happy that you have them making it to the big dance. That's all, because it's always been Alabama. I think this year maybe Ohio State can get it done just with C.J. Stroud and how talented he is.
Yeah.
But it's college football. You never know what's going to happen. We appreciate you coming on. I know you just recently joined the College Football Inquirer podcast. So if you want to plug that, plug your Twitter, so that way the listeners know where to find you.
Yeah, my Twitter is just my name, Ross Dellenger, and I'm on the podcast with my colleague Pat Forty and the Yahoo columnist Dan Wetzel, and I think we do a pod every 2 weeks, and we'll tweet it out, and then you can go to si.com for all of the content.
One last bonus question I forgot. Have you ever eaten at the Ben 612 up in Starkville?
Oh, of course. Ben was it Ben 612? Yeah, Ben 612? Yeah.
612. Yeah.
Yes, Ben is one of my favorite spots. Yeah, it
chicken
opened,
tenders with the queso and the fries.
That's right. It opened like probably my last year up there, right? Like I was a senior, I think, when it opened. So it's done well. Been basically 15 years. But I went there. I was in Starkville in May, and went to a baseball game and walked to the Ben. And yeah, it's a great spot.
Yeah, that's what I visited my cousin when he was up there a few times, and there was a lot of late nights there at the Ben. A nice little takeout to get that chicken and the queso and fries. So, but we appreciate you coming on. hope you have a good rest of your night. Hopefully there's not too much more breaking news. You can actually get some sleep tonight.
Yeah.
And start the day anew tomorrow. So, but yeah, thanks for coming on, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thanks.
Thank you so much.